In a world where anything is possible, in a world where the normal and the paranormal reside, Almost Unbelievable brings to you the stories you want to hear, but fear to hear. Join us in the pit.
You have joined the Almost Unbelievable Paranormal Podcast with Cats. I'm Ranty. Are you there, Cats?
I am here and I'm looking forward to today's show. As always, tell me a little bit about it.
Well, Zack has an incredible story to tell us. Him and his wife, believe it or not, now, I don't know whether it's true or not, but they believe that they can meditate to the point where they can actually visualize other beings in different universes, in different worlds, and go there, converse with them, be sometimes even fed information that should help advance our technological abilities. How astonishing is that?
That is pretty astonishing, yeah. And I do believe he's brought a technical innovation that he was given for us to look at today, which I'm extremely looking forward to looking at. But before we do that, I do have a little story of my own about magical beings that seem to appear out of nowhere. Would you like to hear it?
I certainly would, and I'm all ears. Go ahead, Kaz.
Well, it's a true or false story. Have you heard the story of Emily Sagi? And if I pronounced that wrong, which I probably have, I apologise.
I can't say I have, Kaz.
So the story of Emily Sagi is actually quite well known.
Well, not that well known, is it? I didn't remember it.
Well, true. It does date back to the mid to late 1860s. But essentially, it's a story of somebody who was a school teacher. Apparently, she was a very happy, bubbly, popular school teacher. Kids really liked her. All the staff at the schools really liked her. But there was a problem. In a period of 16 years, she was employed in 18 different schools. Now, I am, for those who don't know, who are listening, I am a teacher. And how can I put it? If another teacher arrives at your school and in the past 4 or 5 years has been in 4 or 5 schools, there is perhaps a question about why have they been in 4 or 5 schools over the past 4 or 5 years? Why haven't they been kept on by any of the schools? What is wrong with them? You know, it's a little bit unfair perhaps, but there's an expectation on those teachers to sort of prove themselves and show why they've been moving on so quickly. But yeah, 18 schools in 16 different years. But it turns out that Emily was actually an extremely good teacher. Do you want to take a wild guess at why she might have moved schools so often?
I'm going to say maybe she was Mary Poppins.
But very possibly. The truth could be even more strange than that. Apparently, she had a doppelganger. And this is all Googleable. She was a real character. It was some sort of ghostly twin that would just appear at random moments, either while she was teaching a class and she had her back to the kids, or when she was meeting with other teachers in the staff room, etc. And it would mock and mimic Emily's actions, which would really obviously freak out anybody that was stood talking to her and watching her. And it was for that reason that she was moved on from, 18 different schools in 16 years, wasn't it? So incredible. Now that apparently is a true story. So whether her doppelganger was a real person or whether she was being stalked maybe by somebody or whether it was an actual ghost, who knows? What do you think?
Well, you know me, I've got stories about doppelgangers myself. My sister had a doppelganger of her own that essentially walked into the room where my auntie was serving up a cup of tea and my auntie talked to her and this, that and the other, but my sister was never there. So, and of course there's my mum as well, you know, with what happened to her. I mean, these stories are on the podcast if you want to take a chance and listen back to them. That's all great. But yeah, do I believe in doppelgangers? Absolutely. And I can imagine that was quite scary back in the 1800s, though.
I imagine it was, and there were very few explanations because it was such a weird story. However, funnily enough, we did speak to FTFE, the big YouTuber, on a previous podcast about parallel worlds, and one of the theories about Emily Sagi comes from the world of physics, and that is, could this doppelganger actually have been Emily in a parallel universe as different choices were being made, you know, different worlds split off when different choices made? Could it have been a glimpse of a ghostly figure of herself as that was happening? So who knows? There you go.
And just leading on from that as well, if you remember, we had a lady on called Alex. And if you remember when she was telling her story about the scene of this ghostly like figure with a woman and a walking a dog, and disappeared right in front of them. But she recalls that her friend turned around and said, "Hey, do you know what? That spirit, let's say, or that person that we saw with the dog looked like you and the dog." So, I mean, maybe there is something to that. Maybe there are these parallel worlds where people are just repeating the same things at the same time in the same locations, doing the same manual job, and they just happen to just bump into each other. Maybe this Alex was just walking a dog at a similar time that she walks a dog in a different universe. Who knows? And like you say, maybe with this teacher as well, maybe that's a part of that too. How very interesting.
Oh yeah, very interesting. Actually, I'm going to have to look into the physics of that. Maybe we could do a podcast all about it at some point in the future. But for now, I will let you introduce the guest.
Yes, so today's guest is called Zack. And as I've already told you in the introduction, Zack believes that he can communicate with outer-worldly beings from different universes, different star systems. So, without a moment to waste, let's introduce today's guest. Hello, Zack. Are you there?
I am here.
Awesome. Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to pop myself on mute and I'm going to let you tell us the story from start to finish. Go ahead.
All right, so it started roughly about probably like 10 years ago is when I first really had my first experience with UFOs. I used to sit out on my bed and look out over the valley. I lived up in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, up in Washington State. And I would sometimes see these red balls of light fall through the clouds and end up dropping into the forest. And I know it's not flares because a lot of people have said it's flares. Flares float down. They're slow moving. And I know it wasn't a shooting star because those things are really fast. This fell into the forest and just disappeared. So that really kind of got my interest in like the whole UFOs, like extraterrestrial stuff. And about, I'd say probably, I think it was like 2018 I was working at like a wood mill type thing that makes moldings for like houses, whatever. And one of my buddies there, one of my coworkers, was also pretty into the UFO stuff. And so I had shown him some pictures that I had taken from when I was living there in my house. I was playing around on Snapchat and I was taking some photos outside of the window. And, I'd draw like funny pictures and whatnot, make it look weird, whatever. But I had noticed a little weird, shiny, almost like a little oval. I wouldn't say like a tic tac, but it was like small and like ovalish. And there's a second one just above it. And I thought, that's pretty cool. And of course, there's a bird in the picture, so I know it's not like a bird. I know it's not an airplane. There's no wings. It's just this little tic tac shaped thing. There's two of them. And I had went to work the next night, and I had shown my buddy this, and he freaked out because the previous evening, his buddy had taken a photo of these same objects, but they were lit up. And you can see like almost like a disc shape to like the image, and it was like pinkish bluish. So that was pretty interesting. And that kind of really solidified my beliefs in UFOs. So fast forward to roughly 3 months ago, my wife and I, we started doing meditations because we're both pretty spiritual people. We're both Wiccan, pagan. And so we do a lot of meditations. We do a lot of different kinds of spell work, all different kinds of stuff. And we had heard about this thing called CE5. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it.
CE5? No, that's new to me. What is it?
And it's new to me as well, I have to say.
So, a man named Stephen Greer. I'm not sure if you've heard of him.
Oh, Stephen Greer, the big, bulky doctor who's always on the UFO programs.
Yeah, he started kind of coined that CE5 thing. I know a lot of people talk down on him because I guess he's charges like a shit ton of money for like these whole excursions or projects or take people out in the desert, see some UFOs. I'm not too sure about it. A lot of people don't like him. I don't know why, because my wife and I, we have tried this stuff. And I'm telling you, it works. So What we did was we put on some like EDM chill step music, like instrumental stuff, kind of like get into like that ethereal mood.
So that was the start of Zack's incredible story, and I have to say, it is incredibly fascinating, and that's all I can say. You'll hear the rest of it in 1 week on YouTube, but if you can't wait and you really want to hear the rest of it right now, all the links are in the description, and we really do appreciate you leaving a like on the video, and subscribe and follow us on those podcast places where you can find us. The links are in the description. If our links aren't in the description for the podcasts that you currently use, just follow us so that you will always be able to find your way back, and we'll see you all in the next one.